Man, it is so cold outside. It's never been this cold before this time of year. Must be global warming. How are you doing? Um, yeah. I wished I had kids of my own. I would educate them so much better than kids today are. Um, and I've heard a lot of stuff recently because of what's going on in 2020 that kids are doing extremely poorly due to at-home classes, and some of it might be a lot of the poor children don't have the ability to Zoom call, or they don't have a laptop or a computer. I don't know to what extent that is actually true, but apparently I know that the kids are actually they need to mingle, they need to socialize. And it could be a combination of the fact that they're depressed and down and out, and that they need to be around others, and that somehow stimulates learning. But I myself, growing up, knew, right from the beginning that my teachers were essentially foolish. I hung out in the library. I was taking college classes in high school. My college professors said that I was a prodigy. Um, but I've always railed against the education system, and even though it is really bad in the United States, it's not that much better in Europe. The proof is in the pudding. I'm actually incredibly impressed with Finland and what they do, the no pressure approach to learning, but still people aren't learning things that they need to, and they're spending an enormous amount of time on stuff that is ultimately unimportant. Obviously, it depends on what sort of profession you go into, but mere memorization, go home and read pages 1 through 100. We have a multiple guess test this weekend. All it does is it heaps stress on people. It makes them adverse to learning. Learning is a joyous experience where you open your mind and broaden your mind. That's what real learning is. When you tell people to memorize garbage in, garbage out, you don't teach them how to think. It's completely ludicrous. Even though this is the world we live in, kids are not taught about money. That's ultimately something on the side. Kids, nor was I, and you weren't either unless it was by your parents. Instead of learning how to do this so you could get money, you should be taught about money. And I am guilty of this deficiency in myself, since I didn't learn the stock market early on in life. I should have done that, and several other things, because I'm obviously not living high financially, but I consider wisdom the most important thing, and it is the most important thing in the world, and I have a lot of that. But what kids need to learn, they're not, even if what is happening in 2020 was not going on right now, kids would still be learning the same garbage. Memorization, it's not good for their minds. It's good to an extent, but ultimately it's bad. We have a bunch of indoctrinated people that have memorized endless garbage that they'll never use, and they don't actually have the tools within their mind to spontaneously synthesize problem solutions. If you were a rich person back in the medieval periods, all the way up to really roughly right about 15th, 16th century, your kids got an education in Platonism and Aristotle. Depends on which side the teacher was weighted on. Either one is good as far as the methodology to learn things. What your kids right now, if they're deprived of school, more important than memorizing garbage. All these parents, and I understand why, are upset that their kids are not in school. They're not learning anything. Well, it's what they can be. 95% of the important things I learned in life, I learned by learning the ancient secrets of the Platonists, Neoplatonists, Indians, and others. by hanging out in the library and actually concentrating my mind on the important things. And that didn't require me to go to college. I mean, I did go to college. I spent many years in college. It was a total waste of time and a total waste of money. But I got all that from the library. You actually have to have a desire to learn. But kids today are really, really put off of learning. And that's, unfortunately, I hate to say this, why we're breeding a bunch of unintelligent kids that they're literally traumatized in school. They're stressed out to memorize garbage. You know, go home and read this. That's not how somebody learns something. That doesn't give them the tools to think correctly. And IQ tests don't test for anything important. IQ tests don't test for nonlinear spontaneous thought synthesis. IQ tests don't test for no one's taught this in school at all. The Ancient Lost Art of Retroduction, which I'm working on a booklet on that right now. Nothing that, if you were rich in the medieval ages, you wanted your child to get the best education. They learned, so this is the reason why people think, and nobody ever talks about this, books like De Divina Proportione or Theoria Philosophiae Naturalis by Roger Boskovic or a Paraphesian. These people who lived, depending on which one, between the 6th century AD to the 16th century, these people, they studied and thought by candlelight. They don't have the amazing resources that we have here. At our fingertips on the internet, we have access to billions of books, quite literally. I mean, they would have died to have had something. So by default, we should be more intelligent, but it's just the opposite is the case. When people try to read really, really intelligent stuff from the masters, like the gentleman who wrote the Paraphesian, John Scotus Erigena, they have, most people, they can't make, like Theoria Philosophiae Naturalis, half is in Latin, half is in English. People can't even make it through a page. Their mind literally implodes on itself. The point I'm actually getting to, if you want your child to have a real education where they have the tools within their head for synthesizing answers to problems, because you could collect all the facts in the world, but that doesn't tell anybody. It's like giving someone 1,000 parts to a car, but they don't know what to do with it. They don't know what it is. They don't know how to build it. I mean, you teach somebody how to build something, they can build other things. They could instantaneously. That's what I actually did when I was young, too. I was given a lot of broken stuff that was thrown in the garbage, like at IBM. I would take it apart with a screwdriver or learn how things work. Hands-on approach is best, but not just hands-on. There's the methodology to be able to spontaneously problem solve is not taught in any school or college today, not even in Europe. It's just not. If you want your child to be, cream of the crop or, rise to the top, whether they're in school right now or not because of what's going on this year, they need to read important stuff that will build their mind. Every child, somewhere around the age of 12 or 14, depending on the developmental advancement of that child, should be given a copy of the Paraphesian by John Scotus Erigena. Every child. Paraphesian. Someone put a link below to the Paraphesian. There are several links out there to different translations. O'Meara's translation of the Paraphesian. The other one, even though it's incomplete, Thomas Taylor's translation of the Enneads of Plotinus. Even the Stephen McKenna, which is a horrible translation, it's complete. Even that will develop a child's mind to think acutely, and he or she will have a very sharp mind. This is the stuff. No one talks about this. This is so important. Like I said, when you're rich and you had kids, you wanted the best education, they would study, Plato, Plotinus, Numenius, Syrianus, Iamblichus, these great masters of Platonism and Neoplatonism. And the kids that studied this stuff, they themselves became incredible masters of wisdom and intellect that nobody will ever get from any high school or college. Nobody. These are the people that wrote the Divina Proportione. These are the people that wrote Theoria Philosophiae Naturalis, the people that wrote the Periphysian, the works of Dr. Ananda Kitish Kumaraswamy. He wrote countless books, hundreds of articles, knew 27 languages. I was friends with his son, who gave me the rights to his father's works. If you want your child to have a good education, going through this school curriculum garbage and memorizing, useless facts only goes so far, and it doesn't go that far at all. There's that old saying that you could teach, give someone a fish and feed them for a day, or you could teach them how to fish and feed them for a lifetime. When someone has the intellectual toolbox within their head that you can only get from the masters such as Plotinus, Iamblichus, Porphyry, Numenius, Syrianus, Damasius, John Scotus Erigena, Dr. A.K. Kumaraswamy, Walter Russell. That makes a sharp mind. That broadens someone's intellect to the point where they want to know. Making kids memorize garbage and pass multiple the only reason Western society came up with this trash is so that they could standardize everybody and, rubber stamp their forehead. This kid took an SAT class and he scored XYZ. That doesn't mean that you have an intelligent kid. They might have memorized a lot of facts. They can regurgitate a lot of stuff that they were told to believe in, but they don't understand anything. They can't spontaneously synthesize anything. They have no grasp of anything. They could tell you, the molecular composition of ABCX, but they can't tell you what the essa of that is, the essence, the nature of what it is. They become very good at descriptions, and yet they can't explain anything, which means they don't understand anything. If you don't understand anything, then you can't explain anything. Yet you end up with all these foolish college graduates that regurgitate garbage. They don't understand anything. They have no practical knowledge whatsoever. The fact that all these kids are being deprived of, and I know parents are mad, of course they are, being deprived of education. No, what they're being deprived of is their brains stuffed with empirical facts, nonsense, and other things that 99.9% of which is not useful. It doesn't enrich somebody. A true education is not about stuffing someone's head with empirical facts. It is about enriching their lives so that they always want to study and they're fascinated with learning and they grow in wisdom and intellect. And they read the best of the best, because life is too short to read garbage, as I've said countless thousands of times. It's way too short to read garbage. And that's all they teach these kids in high school and college. Garbage in, garbage out, multiple guess test. Read these pages. We got a multiple guess test tomorrow. It just turns people, it just spoils these kids. It spoils them. It ruins them. That they don't want to learn anything because they've completely associated learning with misery and stress. Stress, misery, learning. Stress, misery, learning. You end up indoctrinating. You turn these people into anti-intellectuals. I don't want to know stuff. That's what they try to do in school and college. They try to pound my brain with a bunch of useless information that I'll never use, that'll never help me in life. Most of which is true. That Western society approach is horrific. It's absolutely horrific. It is an assembly line for turning out, rubber-stamped heads that believe in the same garbage. They don't understand anything. They can't explain anything. They're not sharp. They're not intelligent. They're not wise, but they can regurgitate a lot of useless facts so they can pass a test. And when you pass the test, the school says, yay, you learned this, kid. And schools get XYZ tax money if they have a certain percentage of kids that are rubber stamped with the seal of approval. You've been indoctrinated. You now believe the same garbage the rest of us do. They just create miserable individuals that are literally anti-intellectuals because they associate stress and misery with pounding their heads full of useless factoids. Kind of like that guy on Cheers, Cliff Clavin. I mean, he is a total fool. But I mean, he has 10 billion useless facts in his head about nonsense and rubbish, like, how tall is the Washington Monument and how far is it between, Chicago and Washington. Just useless information. Learning is about enrichment and making someone wiser and to have the ability to spontaneously generate problem solving and insightful ideas. It is about an active mind, filling kids' heads with useless facts. While it does serve a purpose to an extent, it is a very limited extent, and you're just making these miserable zombies. All these kids that are out in the streets doing all sorts of crazy nonsense and stuff, those are the indoctrinated fools that were told that a college education is going to make their life. And it didn't do that. It just made them broke, deep in debt, and dumber than they were when they went into college. That, unfortunately, is the truth. Thanks so much for watching, and goodbye.